Hey everyone, sorry about the music jump there. I wasn't expecting it to immediately snap into the next one with some crazy like horn sound. Anyway, welcome. Hopefully everyone had a good afternoon, or a good morning session rather, a good weekend. Able to rest up and get all the market movement that we had today, or at least going into lunchtime. Before we jump in, as always, make sure to swing on over to slingshotfutures.com, scroll down, and click on the Join the Daily Alec newsletter. From there, you'll be able to sign up for our email newsletter list to be notified every time one of these videos comes out. Along with that, in the email, we talk about a bunch of stuff we just don't have time to talk about in the live stream, and that's going to be everything from options, crypto, stocks, you name it. If it's moving, it'll show up in there at some point. Along with that, make sure to head on over to the live Trader subscription and trial info, where you can sign up for a free 3-day trial in the room, hang out with us for a couple days, see how we approach the market, see how we trade, and just generally get an idea of how everything works, get your feet a little bit wet, ask some questions, and have some fun with us. So make sure to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. Looking at the news for tomorrow, today was a little bit calm, quiet in the morning session, opened up a little bit going into lunchtime. Tomorrow, in terms of news, we've got a bunch of other things going on too. Germany and China have the Labor Day holiday. Out of Australia, early in the morning at 00:30. That would be 12:30 in the morning Eastern time. Australia has the RBA interest rate decisions forecasted at 1.5% for May. They also have the rate statements coming out at the same time. At 4:30 out of the UK, they have the manufacturing PMI for April forecasted at 54.9. Out of Canada at 8:30, they have the GDP for February forecasted at 0.3%. 10 o'clock, we have our first U.S. news announcement, or at least the first big one, which is the ISM manufacturing PMI for April, forecasted at 58.6. Canada at 14:30 has the Bank of Canada Governor Paulo speaking, and then out of China, later in the evening session tomorrow at 21:45, we have the Kaixin manufacturing PMI. My pronunciation's probably wrong, but that is also coming out a little bit later. So in terms of the news calendar, relatively light. We have some U.S. news tomorrow, but not a ton to really, throw the markets around or get anything going crazy, which may or may not be a bad thing. Sometimes it's kind of nice not having a fully loaded news calendar. We can get something going without having to worry about, oh, well, we've got news in another 3 minutes. Might be more of a blessing in disguise. We'll have to wait and see. Jumping over to the euro is seeing continuation to the downside. The bears are obviously still in charge, slamming the market lower. We never really got out of this funk. We found that support level at 21,245, and the market has since just been kind of hanging around there. It's not really breaking out. It's not really getting anything going. It's just kind of hung up. They tried breaking out below the low of it, but then popped right back up again. And that chop and slop, if we go into a faster time frame, at that 21,245 area is even more apparent. Hang on a second, my mouse is messing up on me. As we can see, just a huge amount of back and forth. We have a good, we had a good bounce right there, broke underneath, held as resistance for a little bit, but arguably inside of that held as a nice support bounce. Resistance, finally broke above it, probably support. Really messy around this 21,245 area. With the overall downward pressure that we have going on with the euro, really, I think it's more of a waiting game. With such a strong reaction at the bottom without breaking through a new low, right? We wanted to see the sellers really pile drive in, slam the market to a new low, and keep it going. In this case, we don't have that follow through. We have that big bear spike, but then nothing else. So this creates a situation where we need to wait and see what they want to do. Is this going to be just a slight pause and then a continuation breakdown? Or is this going to be an attempted reversal back up again? That's the part that it kind of remains to be seen. If this is going to be a continuation breakdown and they want to get some traps going, I wouldn't necessarily mind finding a trap at the high of that bear bar, that exhaustive bear bar that kind of blew out of the lows. See it come back to the high, see the sellers defend it, and then push it back down again. Make a lot of sense here for the sellers to try to keep that move going. But if this bull bar closes really strong, might find some buyers above it, and depending on what the follow-through is, and that's going to be the important part, is the follow-through. If the buyers get a strong bull bar, it ticks above it, getting the buyers in, and then immediately reverses back down. That's a big deal, because now we have buyers that are trapped, and their stops are likely underneath the lows. So the reaction to a strong bull bar is just as important as getting the strong bull bar itself. So we gotta wait a little bit here until we get firm ground to really work with. No new levels of resistance or support aside from the one at 21,245. Just kind of waiting for a little bit more info on the euro right now. obviously the bear side has a lot of emphasis, but it wouldn't be a surprise to see a slight corrective phase inside of this so sellers can get some better prices. You know, for me, I'm looking at more of an area of interest on a break above those highs at 21,800, assuming that that breakout is going to be a false breakout and then push the market right back down again. So that's the game plan for the euro. Over on gold, we are seeing some good continuation here. Oh, for whatever reason, I just grabbed this level. Back down again. It's really good bear continuation to the downside. Sellers are pile driving in. New level of resistance at 1325.6. It bounced off of major support at 1311.2 and popped right back up again. Beautiful bounce on 11.2. And not only that, but also just the lows of the overall channel. We had the channel drawn from high and high down to the lows. What is going on with my mouse? Jeez, peeps, skipping all over the place. And it created not only the horizontal support at 11.2, but also a bounce off of the lows of the channel. So a lot of really good support coming in here for the buyers to bounce the market back up on gold, and bounce they did. Very nice push back to the upside on just a beautiful bounce off of 11.2. Retesting the underside of the earlier wedge. You can see that kind of serpentining through. It's so shallow I can't even draw it correctly. Let me angle it a little bit more. Retesting that area's resistance, and this is where we need to see the buyers either show up or give up. If the buyers are going to take this back and start a corrective phase back up towards 34, we're going to need to see them really break through this level and keep this going. We have a lot of resistance in the way, and there's a lot of work that has to be done by the buyers. And, well, this is a good start, you know, a good bull bar that has another 50 minutes before it closes. It might get stronger, it could get a lot weaker, but they got to keep that going if they're going to start getting a corrective phase up. Right now, sellers are probably looking to sell into anything they can get their hands on, and the assumption that any corrective phase that does happen is going to go back down. And if we start seeing some weakness down here already, that could be a pretty big clue that the buyers are just not ready to jump in yet on gold. But we definitely did have a beautiful bounce off of 11.2. That's what we were looking for. Now it's just a matter of seeing how much follow through that can get. Pop that down. Actually, the support at 14.2 is pretty much done. We'll get rid of that. Over on crude oil, what a rip to the upside. Holy cow. Crude oil was looking a little bit bearish. We were talking about how we had an over breakout through the highs of the channel, a secondary breakout attempt which failed. We then broke underneath the inside of the channel for a retest. It held the inside of the channel and started moving down, but it never did break down those lows. I think if it was able to break down those lows, we would have been on a downward spiral trying to get to the lows of the channel and break out there, but they didn't make it. And that's the important part, because the buyers have now come back in and slammed the market higher, and I'm still looking for that same resistance zone up here to push the market back down if it can make it up there. Short-term resistance is at 68 1/4. That has broken, so that's pretty much done and gone. We do, of course, have the inside of the wedge or channel high once again. It's the same thing it held over here. Same situation. So if we do get a little bit more continuation, the buyers are going to have to break through this resistance, break through the next level of resistance at 69.12, and start pushing into our major sell zones at 69.38 up to 55, and arguably up to 70. This whole area up here is a giant sell zone for buyers both taking profit and sellers looking to initiate new positions on overextension. Everything looks really good in crude oil, breaking above resistance, strong bullishness to the upside. It's certainly not joking around here. It's just a matter of how far they can get. Trapping above 69.38 is very likely at this point in time. It's just a matter of how fast they can get there. If they're going to go running now or in the next 10-15 minutes, or are they just going to stall out and come back to it, tomorrow? We'll have to wait and see. Looking good, though. Over on the S&P dropping through the bottom, really aggressive selling volume coming in, breaking back through 76.5, breaking through minor support at 67.25, and then shoving all the way down to support at 57.25. So we're just continuously cycling off of these major support levels, and these major support levels are working really well. That's the thing. We're getting some gorgeous bounces here, and not only that, but all of them are working. So even though we do have an overall bearish emphasis, I would still like to see the S&P tank all the way down to new lows, potentially even break below 25.60 or a little bit further down to 25.40. Right now, they're coming in pretty aggressive. That said, the one thing that we do need to keep our eyes on is that this is a really strong rally to the upside. This wasn't joking around. This took back the entire move. Granted, this move happened in 4 hours. This move back up to the corrective phase, back to the highs there, took, a day and a half. significantly different in terms of the time scale. But overall, sellers definitely mean business up here, tapping the highs of that resistance zone and testing the next resistance level we were talking about at 76.5, working beautifully for that drive down, now into a major level of support. This is where the sellers have to show up and break down to the next level of support at 43.75, or we could just go sideways and chop around this area for a little while until they make up their mind. There was a level of support a little bit higher up that was going at around 67.25, but that didn't really do a whole lot. And now we are breaking down a little bit lower. So next major support level, 43.75. We'll have to wait and see if we can start cracking through this 57.25 area, which is a large level of support. And then over on the bonds went ripping higher. They did meet and exceed the 2-to-1 objective we were talking about, that major support level down here. Bounced, they hit 1-to-1 on Friday and then hit 2-to-1 early this morning. And we're still seeing more continuation to the upside. The level of resistance that I was looking for at 143.09? These 30 seconds always throw me off. 09, yeah. 143.09 ended up being a to-the-tick test of resistance. I was looking for resistance around here, maybe a quick snap above and then a fade back. This was one of those situations where it held beautifully, it did exactly what we wanted to do. You just had to be lucky enough to actually get filled in this case. And on the bonds, well, good luck. The bonds tend to be a pretty thick market, so not the easiest thing in the world to get filled on. If you did, congrats, that was a nice little bounce to the downside. Someone like me, I almost never get filled when I need to. So that's just kind of how my luck works. Overall, you know, I definitely can't complain. It worked. It did exactly what we wanted to. I unfortunately was not along for the ride on that one. We are now seeing a little more bullish continuation to the upside, looking for resistance retest right around 144. We do have some shallower resistance at 143 ahead of that. Let's see again. 143.25 is that shallower resistance, and then 143.31 is going to be the big one after that. So overall, beautiful move, did exactly what we wanted to do. The buyers had a 2-to-1 objective and now actually going on a 3-to-1 objective. Sellers even had a short-term opportunity to scalp. Just a gorgeous play on the bonds as a whole. Very nice movement. Let's see here. Let's take a look at a couple of our common ones that we look at. Let's bump this over here. Oop, a little too far. There we go. So taking a look, first of all, at, this was talked about in our, actually before, but also in the email newsletter, we're talking about Intelstat, or Intelsat, I always pronounce that wrong, with a ridiculously strong rally to the upside. I mean, this is a daily chart, and we have 17 plus days back to back. The first time they had bearishness, the buyers are obviously going to buy into it. That worked out beautifully. Coming into today, I still want to see a breakdown attempt below 951. A strong bear bar for a bear washout, something like that would be beautiful for potential buying back up. Either way, this is a hyper strong bull rally to the upside, and any pullback or any corrective phase is likely going to get bought right back up again. We'll just have to wait and see until that comes around. One of our favorite ones, Twitter. Twitter did pull back just a little bit. We did have a crack underneath that level of support, and now it's fighting back, trying to get back above those highs. If it does push down, we have major levels of support, 26.60 and 25.24. The buyers need to show up so they can start defending these lows, and if they start failing, we could potentially even be looking for a falling wedge top to get things maybe a little bit nastier in terms of that, but we do have a rising wedge bottom as well that seems to be holding at the moment. Big levels I'm watching, of course, are these big, thick red lines and the orange lines. Those are levels of support that we're kind of stuck inside of. But for right now, Twitter is just kind of on the balance. It needs to make up its mind. Is it going to break down or is it going to keep going up? This might just be a pullback for continuation. Either way, though, we do have a potential wedge, so we'll mark that up. Extend that to the right, and we'll draw this off the highs and extend that to the right as well. So we do have a new wedge forming here on Twitter. Getting a little bit, I mean, again, we need a little bit more info. Right now, we're just kind of on a balance point. We need to see them break above this and keep it going, or fail down to the next level of support. There's not much else going on there on Twitter. Boeing is having a little bit of a hard day as well, pulling back off of the highs. Still looking for that equidistant breakdown all the way down to 300s if it does start cracking lower. Boeing's been having a little bit of trouble. You'll notice on the chart there's a lot of gapping and then pausing. It'll gap up to the next day, and then the next day doesn't do a whole lot. It'll gap down to the next one, and then nothing happens. We're not really getting any big movement right now on Boeing, and that is even after earnings. Earnings didn't do much either. It had a big day on earnings, but then the next day it just took it all back again, so it didn't make much of a difference. You know, historically speaking, that tends to be the spark for a bigger move. You know, last time we had earnings, had a big spark and then it went ripping higher, you know, shortly thereafter. Same thing over here. We had earnings for a big gap up and then went flying lower. This time around we had earnings, nothing happened. We had a big bull bar, or a big bear bar rather, but it just died out. So still on the waiting game for Boeing to see what they want to do. Dropbox never made it below that 28 level, 27.75. Didn't quite make it there. Tried really close, but just shaved it, missed it, and now we're bouncing back up again. So still waiting on Dropbox. Live cattle was another one that we talked about quite frequently. Good bull breakout to the upside. This is where it looks to be, honestly, where a lot of sellers that we were talking about back here, sellers trying to sell in, drive the market down, they got trapped out. It snapped back down again, but it never sold underneath it before popping back up with a big old bull bar, trying to get that breakout move. Still looking for a little bit, that wasn't even close, still looking for a little bit more movement here to the upside to see if we can grab that 110 area, just shy of 110. But for the most part, you know, this is starting to look more and more like it might be gearing up for a channel rather than anything else. And right now we're towards the highs of a very tight channel. Might have to pull back and just kind of rattle its way up towards that area. It seems to be the case at the moment on live cattle. Let's see, what were some other ones? MasterCard. MasterCard had an attempted breakout. They tried getting the breakout going above the wedge top. Didn't really succeed very well. Right now, especially, I mean, looking at the current candle, it looks like crap. We need a little bit more follow-through. They weren't able to get it going. We had a beautiful bull spike after the wedge bottom test. Everything looking really nice there. We just need to see some follow-through to break the top of the wedge. If we can clear the top of the wedge, then we should be good to go for a little bit more movement. But right now, it is just stuck, and that is causing some issues in the overall price action. Need a little bit more out of MasterCard. And again, looking at some of its counterparts like Visa, Visa is pushing into new highs, which is a very good thing. Like we talked about, Visa and MasterCard, they do tend to move hand in hand. Visa is a little bit stronger in this case than MasterCard, but the fact that Visa is pushing into new highs, MasterCard does have a little bit of following potential. It just has to reach up and actually get it going. It just seems like it's stuck right now, and well, it's stuck on top of the wedge, so not a big surprise there. All right. Those are all the major markets that we normally take a look at. Of course, Tesla is on that list as well. Not much going on in Tesla, but seeing another reattempt to try to break higher above 295. We got above 300 momentarily, on and off for several days before pulling back a little bit. That's after that major support test at 259.74. Seeing if we can get some follow through here on Tesla back up towards those highs. It's having a hard time. But, you know, again, this whole level below 295 is a monstrous accumulation zone. So the fact that it's not doing so great above 300 doesn't necessarily concern me yet. I think this is more just accumulation before an attempted rally to the upside. So it just kind of makes sense to see it bounce around inside here for a bit. Once we start seeing the breakout, you'll know. It'll be pretty obvious when they start breaking out with continuation. Just a matter of waiting for it to happen. Couple crazy movers today. Yeah, there were definitely a couple crazy movers. One of them, I don't want Tesla, CHEK, check cap. Check cap has historically had all over the place movement. I mean, this thing was nuts. It had put in a low of $3.12, and then just a few days later put in a high of almost $20, and then dropped all the way back down to $6.50, and then popped back up, and now we're trading at $12. It's crazy all over the place right now. This is the type of market that I do not want to hold overnight. I'm not a long-term holder on check. This is the kind of market that I would much rather scalp because, well, I just don't trust the longer-term move. Why would I, right? Tomorrow might be at 70, and then the next day it might be at 3. Who knows? So it is definitely a nice intraday scalper. Beautiful movement overall, but outside of that, I don't necessarily know that I would want to hang on to it for very long. It's a tough one. Definitely a tough one. None of the others really putting in a whole lot of movement. GNPX does have some fairly decent movement, you know, overall, but yeah, for the most part, not much going on outside of a nice bear trend, and that's if your broker has shares to short. Most are on a short sale restriction, so good luck there. But nice bear movement either way. One of the other ones that was kind of interesting standing out today was Sprint. Sprint had just a monstrous order. I mean, huge order, batting it back and forth between 65 and 66, 65 and 66. There was, I think, at one point 6,000 on the sell side versus like 12 or 1,300 on the buy side. huge amount of sell volume. The buyers finally gave way, and it just starts chugging lower, and now we're getting into this kind of mixed bag here again. And if we look at the active side, we can see they certainly have another monstrous seller. This honestly looks identical. There was another 150 before, above that, 150 below that. It looks the same that it has the whole way down. So big sellers, and these sellers definitely mean business. 3,700 on the bid, 5,100 on the ask. Just huge volume right now on Sprint. So it's a grinder, that's for sure. It's definitely grindy. You're catching a little bit of sell side action here, getting pushed down pretty hard. Testing weekly support 2860. And PTLA catching a nice lift. Solid movement. So even though the futures markets were a little bit slow this morning, the stocks were at least moving around a little bit, gave some opportunities, but pretty calm and quiet. We'll have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. So feel free to type in any markets you want me to take a look at. If I don't see any come in the next couple minutes here, then we will wrap it up. Take a look through the morning watch list, see if anything's going on yet. FTC catching a nice lift. 1787 is the high. HTBX is open, it seems. HTBX, geez, OP. Huge movement. HTBX had a circuit breaker halt at 1318.36. They are now open again and catching some really nice rallying to the upside. Beautiful movement. It actually gapped down on the resumption back down to sub 2 and then popped all the way back up. It's up 40 cents from that point now. Oh man, look at this daily chart. Just insane. Oh, you gotta love these little pump and dumpers. They're great. It's just this gigantic bull bar right now. It'll probably end up looking like a giant doji by the end of the day, but we'll see. All right, well, not seeing any other requests in markets or anything like that, so that's what we'll do. We'll wrap it up. And yeah, we've got a game plan for tomorrow. Really, the big thing going into tomorrow's trading is seeing what the markets want to do. A lot of waiting going into tomorrow. We've had a lot of beautiful tests. Crude oil is making an attempt to break 69.38. Big area of interest. Aside from that, though, you know, there's not much else going on. It's a lot of waiting and seeing what happens. So, like we always say, it doesn't matter what market you're trading. Always make a plan, trade the plan, follow those rules, and you'll be A-okay. Until next time, we'll see y'all then.